We couldn't be happier to have Virgil here because he's been involved with both the OEMs and now certainly on the auction side. So great round of applause to Virgil and this stellar panel that he has assembled for us on consignment.
You know, as I look out on this crowd, it looks like we have an awful lot of auction operators out there. This should be a very important piece of the day because what more and what better consignors than we have sitting up at this table here. I see my name up here already, and it looks like we're ready to start. But I wanted to just kind of give you some feedback as to what has been going on over the last couple of months. In fact, I started this off back in January when I found out that I was going to be a part of this panel group. And I said, man, I'm not going to do this just by myself and keep on asking all these questions. So back in January, I wrote to these guys and I said, you know, we've got this panel discussion coming up. I wanted everybody to kind of think about the panel discussion, even though it is January. And everyone comes back to me with their comments and why are you starting this so early? Well, I happen to take a bit of a holiday during that time. And I wanted to be sure that by the time I came back, everything was pretty much in order. So not typical of what you have seen in terms of panel discussions here. What we did was we put together some thoughts and some questions that we're going to ask the panel. They all have had their opportunity to provide input, and they all have done that. So we're really anxious to have each of them give some of their views and thoughts with regard to some of the questions that are being asked. And to start off this panel discussion, I'd really like each of the panelists, because we've got 6 here, to introduce themselves, talk a little bit about what they do for their company, because I know each of them are a little bit different. We have consignors from credit arms, we have consignors from the factory, we have consignors that handle both. So each of them are somewhat unique. So with that, I think I'm going to start with you, Rob.
Oh, okay, thank you. Well, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Rob Fecher. I'm with Mazda North American Operations. Obviously, I oversee our remarketing functions for our company vehicles. But another critical component of my position is to work with our business partners as well as our finance corporation, which is Chase under the Mazda Capital Services brand. And the point of that is that, though in some cases, obviously, we have no financial interest in the vehicles, it is to be able to deliver all of our vehicles in as many locations together so that we can reach out to the same audience, i.e. our Mazda dealers. And obviously, your assistance in doing that has, and I'm sure will be in the future, very critical and important to us, and we appreciate all your efforts, particularly as we're going through some transitions right now as far as our relationships with Mazda Capital Services is relatively new and volumes are increasing, and we're going to look forward to your assistance in making it successful.
Thank you. Dan. I think everyone knows Dan, right?
Good afternoon. I'm Dan Kennedy with GM Remarketing. We go to market handling rental company and the customer buyback vehicles. We go to market also with Ally with the off-lease and the repos. Have responsibility for managing the upstream channel for us on the remarketing or on the rental and the company vehicles, along with the physical auction responsibilities or the relationships. We move vehicles, so we have relationships with carriers. We've got the relationships with service providers for glass and other services, PDR and paint and stent repair, partial bumper repairs. We also have the responsibility for maintaining a relationship with our certified pre-owned. We're actually part of the used vehicle group for General Motors, and if you think of it as two pillars, we've got the remarketing side on one, and we've got the certified pre-owned on the other. And we're a source of the used vehicles that our certified pre-owned dealers need in order to reach their goals of certifying used vehicles for the retail customers. So we work with them very closely to make sure we get vehicles to the certified dealers and taking a look at different programs that they have that we can use to promote our vehicles with the certified pre-owned dealers.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Tom Cornellier with Ford Motor Company. I'm the auction operations and e-business manager. And at Ford, our group is responsible for remarketing all vehicles that are company assets that are handed over to us after Ford Credit's upstream sales. So my group is responsible for the disposal of everything post upstream. So I have a network of Ford area managers and supervisors. I'm also responsible for an e-business team that works with the auctions and internally to support any and all of our upstream or our e-business initiatives. And similar to Dan, we collaborate with the certified pre-owned team, and we collaborate with Ford Credit, and in effect we are Ford Credit's service provider. So whether it's a lease vehicle, repo, company service vehicle, or factory car, they all flow through our department.
Okay, Joe.
My name is Joe Bedwell. I'm the National Auction Manager for Mercedes-Benz Financial Services. Our responsibilities are for the MBUSA portfolio and also Mercedes-Benz Financial Services lease and retail repossessions portfolio as well. Work very closely with MBUSA on a weekly basis between residual risk and their remarketing team, and also between our certified pre-owned department as well. So lots of communication there. And we're at about 11 locations around the country, and going to see some volume coming back, which I know you guys will all be happy to hear. Starting about the fourth quarter this year, we're getting back to normal, traditionally normal levels. So.
Okay, Rob Wagner.
Good afternoon. Wow, that's strong. That works. I'm Rob Wagner, and I'm Associate Director of Asset Remarketing for Hyundai Capital America. Hyundai Capital America is the parent or division arm of Hyundai Motor Group, and we are the finance arm from those. So we operate under Hyundai Motor Finance and Kia Motor Finance, and in our world we are responsible for the repossessions, the lease and balloon return vehicles. We do not handle any of the factory or program cars. Each motor division handles their own cars for those things. We primarily go to market through two different channels. We operate a private label website under the Dealer Direct nomenclature. There's Hyundai Dealer Direct and Kia Motor Finance Dealer Direct. Those are also the .coms and URLs for each of those. We utilize those in a very traditional upstream manner for our lease return cars. That product has now been expanded, and we're doing some early sales of repossessions and some other cars in the .com marketplace. We take everything else to physical auction and utilize those in essentially a regional-centric style of approach to the marketplace. Organizationally, we operate in two teams, so we're organized by online and direct. So there's two teams of people that support each channel.
Okay, Mark. Mark is probably the newest of the panelists here, but he brings a whole lot of experience to this table. Mark.
So I shouldn't talk about when I met you.
No.
In my youth.
There's a lot of stories out there, so
yeah.
let's keep to this panel.
Okay. All right, I'll do that. All right. As Virgil mentioned, I am relatively new to this game. About 11 months ago, I joined our fleet organization, taking over responsibilities I'll talk about in a second. But prior to that, I used to manage our entire real estate portfolio at Chrysler. So it's they figured since I could sell a $10 million dealership, it'd be easy to sell a $30,000 car. What I know. But anyhow, I have, under the Chrysler regime, where it's structured now, everybody wears multiple hats. So in addition to doing basically what, the rest of my compatriots doing down here of handling all of our sale of all of our company and engineering cars, as well as our GDP off rental cars and lease cars through an entire auction process. I also have our entire company car portfolio. So I actually manage the entire fleet of company cars that we have. And then finally, I do all the marketing for our fleet division, all the communications, PR, and marketing that runs through our fleet. So it's sort of fun doing all three aspects of the business, and this will be an interesting thing.
Thanks. Thanks. As I said earlier, each of us have had a chance to put together this whole slide presentation. Each of the panelists have each of these questions, and you'll find that a lot of these questions will not be answered, or the bullet points will not be answered by everyone on the panel here because of their different relationship within their company. But our first one is we're looking for some comments on managing through a changing market. And what I'd like to do is start off with someone that works both with the credit arm as well as the factory cars, the daily rental cars. So I'm going to start off with Tom, if you don't mind.
Sure. That's quite an open-ended question, but I'll do my best. Yeah, as anyone that I've talked to knows, and you all know, this is our low point in terms of volume for Ford, and that's driven primarily by the leases, which we all know about. We will be going up from here. You'll be happy to hear as leasing has returned and those vehicles start coming to market. On the rental car side, the trend has been towards risk. However, we do remarket a significant number of risk cars through our ARS program. And ARS is our business within a business where we work with our auction partners and we consign other vehicles through the Ford lane. And I'd like to take this opportunity to thank our auction partners because we've put a lot of emphasis on ARS over the past couple of years in anticipation of the low volume and what it has done. And I think most auctions would agree that it's a mutually beneficial program. And in addition to the volume, it's helped us maintain the footprint that we have today with our auctions around the country. We did make some changes over the past few years getting ready for what is today our point of low volume. And if it weren't for ARS and the support of you all, the auctions, and supporting us and getting that volume, we probably would look a little different. So thank you for that.
Joe, maybe from your point of view, you could comment on a couple of these bullet points.
Sure. Talking about future volume changes, what the future kind of holds for us. Our volume, fourth quarter this year comes back to normal. Normal year for us in years past has been around 100,000 maturities. This year is around 57,000 maturities. Fourth quarter is about 25,000 of that 57,000, so comes back really strong in the fourth quarter for us. 126,000 maturities next year. The question is how many of those make it to auction. We're going to see, obviously, with rising volumes, we'll see, expect some decreases in values, a little bit of a shrinking equity position, and maybe not as many cars purchased at the grounding level, not as many payoffs from customers. So traditionally for us, 40 to 50% of all terminations will get back at auction. That number this past year has been down as low as 17% making it to auction. That number's climbing back up now to in the 30s, and we expect by next year the number to be back up close to normal levels, around 40 to 50% making it to auction. Changes for us, somebody the other day, asked if we were prepared for the workload with the volume coming back, to which I told them that I think we're looking forward to the volume coming back. Volume being down has given us the opportunity to get extremely creative with our thoughts and to try to implement and execute lots of different ideas, and it's been very good for us, but it's been challenging at the same time, and we're kind of looking forward to getting back to blocking and tackling. So some changes that we've had in the past year, we've made a couple of our locations internet only. It's a great time for us to experiment. Losses are very low. We've done that in Milwaukee and in Dallas. We're not running those sales in the Highline sale. We're running them outside of the Highline sale on a different day, at a different time of the day, and we've had success at those two locations. Somebody asked me the other day, why did you do that? I said, well, because it was a great time for us to do it. We couldn't do it when losses were high because of the risk, but it's a great time for us to take some risks. So I would assume that we'll continue to look at things that challenge our business model, that either validates that the way we're doing it today is the right way or shows us that there's a better way of doing business. So we'll continue to do that, obviously, as time goes on.
Rob, how about you?
Well, we're not in the rental car space, so I'm not sure what my rental car partners are looking out for volumes other than, we know the sales success is very strong, inventories are tight, so I know there's been tightening as far as the fleet and program cars. So like our speaker said this morning, for those volumes today, they're not generating those cars, so those sales will be less tomorrow. From a lease perspective, about 2.5 years ago, when both of my brands really took off and got traction, one of those things they did, they came with very solid and very contemporary lease programs. Our penetration is very high, and the first big wave of those cars start to come back about this time next year. So next year, I fully expect to be here in a tracksuit. I'll have $300 Nikes on, and I'll talk very quickly.
Well, Rob, one more point. When we were talking a couple of weeks ago, you had talked about lease terms and that you were, or your company was looking more at longer-term lease terms rather than shorter. Could you share some light there?
No. I don't know the strategy background, but there's some discussion a little over 2 years ago about timing and residuals, and at the time we still had a pretty good portfolio of program cars, and we were locking heads because they were almost all 1-year-olds. My leases were all 2-year-olds, and we're remarketing more or less the same product, very close to that. And I said, my background is much more successful at having longer-term lease cars. There's almost no downside to the longer-term lease versus the short-term. And today we are predominantly 3-year, and we've just introduced some 4-year, and we've gone away from 2-year leasing entirely.
Thanks. Mark.
Maybe a little more philosophical or big picture on what we see going on. I think the biggest thing that I would say is if the industry stays disciplined, like it's never been disciplined before collectively, with doing irrational things, whether it's in the rental car side or something like that. I mean, it's going to be stable, and it'll grow organically as industry grows. If we grow to a 14 million industry, the business is going to go up in pace with that, as opposed to the big swings that we were seeing in the past. But because of that, and then generates tightness, and because of that tightness, the impact that I see in the industry, it's a lot tighter. The rental agencies are holding their cars longer when they need to. They're arbitraging the market in a smarter way than they've ever done before. The factories on the manufacturing side, we're being much more tactical and when we build cars for the rental agencies and when the cars come out. So what the auctions are starting to see is these big blips. You don't see cars for a month or so, and then all of a sudden you see a ton of cars coming at you, being turned in. I think that's going to be reality. It's going to be having that flexibility of capacity, both, to get the cars through consignment and get them up to auction on a quick basis. It's also a challenge in marketing and getting dealers where I have a small tight market this month and next month I have a large volume of cars coming through, and getting the dealers' heads around that. I think you're just going to see that as we sort of stay in this very tight market over the next, 18 months, 2 years. You're just not going to see the radicalness of volumes that we saw before. So it's my take on what's going on.
Thanks, Mark. Rob, how about?
Well, in regards to the rental companies, they're definitely holding the product a little longer, and we're seeing a little bit higher mileage too. Our ultimate goal is for all of us, us being our business partners and ourselves, is to feed the cars into our dealers for the certified pre-owned programs. And what we need to do is, and have been doing the last year, so is to educate them that the newer models, the 2011s for an example, are going to be a little bit higher mileage than they've seen historically. And sometimes dealers are a little shy of that because they don't want a car with 30,000 plus miles, because sometimes they'll butt up against the limitation of your pre-owned program. So our goal as they feed through the system, regardless if it's upstream or actually through the physical lanes, and we have high users of internet, we've always had high adopters in our dealers, is to ensure that the product is the best it possibly can be from an aesthetic standpoint, so that when the car arrives at their dealership, they can immediately take it through the mechanical recon, not have to worry about a physical reconditioning, and get it up, put the CPO branded materials on it, and get it down the road. I think as time progresses, you'll see some of the cycles shorten a little bit. Our leases, generally speaking, are 36 to 39 months. So there's a little bit of spread between the age of the rental vehicles. But you're also seeing now some 2010s still in rental service. And so you got to be careful about that bridge, and working closely with our partners and them working closely with us in the same respect that they realize it's really important for them to do some type of reconditioning as well, so that the car stands, quotes, tall in the eyes of the consumer, our dealers, and of course, non-Mazda dealers as well, so that they're ready to go down the road. And I think that's really critical for everybody to understand, that we have to continuously communicate that, because the shortage is real. There's no two ways about it. It's really about the fourth quarter and the beginning of the first quarter of next year where you're going to start seeing that increase. And until then, the dealers are paying a lot of money for these cars, and you don't want to hear it. We don't want to hear that there's issues with the product. So I think that's really something that's a critical nature, that we're marketing very heavily for them to get online or get in the lanes or contact us directly or whatever it takes, or you directly, if you're a business partner, that you've taken care of the customer in all aspects, from handling the car from the point of rest to the time it arrives at the store.
Thank you. Any other comments from Dan?
As we take a look at the industry as we go forward, our rental volumes will be about the same. We're very disciplined, and Mark, you touched on it too. We're not going to flood the market. We've got a plan going forward on rental volumes, and we're going to live with that, be it repurchase or risk. There's a pot of vehicles, and we're going to stay there. As far as the values, we've seen, I think everybody in here has benefited from the improved values out there. It's helping us get retail customers out of vehicles that they're in today into new vehicles. It's made used vehicles very attractive, but it's also made new vehicles very attractive, because new vehicles, in a lot of cases, are almost as cost-effective from a pricing standpoint as the used vehicles. From a leasing standpoint, we have a lot of partners that we've partnered with. We have Ally, GM Financial, which is our captive. We've got U.S. Bank. We've have a partnership now with Wells Fargo in the Western region. They're the ones really that are setting the lease terms, and down the road, they'll actually be ultimately responsible for remarketing a lot of their own lease vehicles as they come back. So, Rob, as you talked about the quality, we're very focused on keeping a very high quality vehicle going through the sale lane. We want to make these vehicles as retail ready for our dealers. A lot of our dealers, and I think a number of the franchise dealers out there don't have body shops any longer. So if we can do the repairs on the vehicles while the vehicles are awaiting a sale, we can be very effective in doing that, very cost effective in doing that, and making those vehicles very retail ready for when those vehicles reach back to ride back to the dealerships.
Thanks, Dan. This next discussion is on virtual inventory and sales. And, you know, Joe, you're the one that seems to be the leader in these type sales. And I thought perhaps you could start off a bit here. And I know Rob's group is quite involved. So could we hear from you first?
Well, like I was saying earlier, we have 2 locations that we've done this. I'll tell you another thing that we did a little bit differently with Milwaukee. Our sales all around the country, the Highline sales, are once a month. We challenged that a little bit in Milwaukee. We chose 2 different locations, mainly to understand what would be the differences in these 2 different environments. How would we function in Milwaukee? How would we function in Dallas? 2 different markets. So we wanted to see, how we did there. So in Milwaukee, we went every 2 weeks. Instead of running, once a month, we'd run on the Friday, the week of the Highline sale, and run that twice a month. We've done well with that. And in Dallas, again, it's the day before the Highline sale at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and that's done well for us as well. Really what we're hoping to do with virtual sales, quite honestly, is just learn from it. Ideally, we'd like to find ways to bring cars to market more quickly, and if we can do that without sacrificing cost, then that's what we want to do. The number one objective for us is gross values on our vehicles. We're certainly a leasing company. It's a leasing product. Gross values are essential to us. So when I say we want to bring cars to market, if we can do that quicker than we're doing it today and do that without sacrificing proceeds, then we certainly want to do that. And having the virtual sales like we're doing today has been kind of a step in the right direction there. We're also participating with Manheim on Tuesdays, offering cars every Tuesday in a virtual environment. We've had moderate success with that. I think we have some opportunities there, either from the structure, the way we have it set up, or from getting the word out to the dealers, but we have had some success in moving those cars a little bit quicker and bringing them to market at a faster pace.
Thanks, Joe. Rob, any comments?
Me? No comment?
Yes.
Our online strategy is, I think kind of classic captive in that we have 2 private label websites, and they approach the how to market or the go to market in a cascade or a waterfall, depending on what you're familiar with. So the grounding dealer, he has first shot to buy the car at gross payoff. Used to be terminology that was residual. And then we had to figure out what that meant if the lease is 2, 3, 4 months early. So we've changed that, so now it's always gross payoff. So the dealer, if he's 2 months early, 3 months early, he is in the channel where he's not buying it at residual. He is buying it for gross payoff. So that does include those payments to go. It's been one of those things we've evolved to because we found that the vast majority of those cases, it's a trade-in transaction. So we get a little pushback from the dealers, but it clears up this whole thought of who's going to be on the hook for those other payments. The guy who does step out of their lease early and the dealer doesn't collect those payments, he's not exactly thrilled when 60 days later he gets an invoice for 4 payments and excess wear and tear and miles and dispo fee. So it's been good. Second place after that, we utilize a market-based price for those grounding dealers. And there's actually a leftover from when we were in periods of high residuals and much more conservative marketplace. So we give the grounding dealer, if that gross payoff residual price was significantly disconnected to the market, a way to have a price in between. It was not negotiated, it was not open bidding, but it was a way of, residual was 15 and the market was 12. There's not going to make dealers buy those at 15. So this way it gave us a place to put a price in between. Assuming the dealer then does not transact at that figure. It then goes into regular online auction. And our online auction would look just like a private label eBay. It has a buy now and it has open regular bidding. The open regular bidding is not immediate hit of reserve, so they do have to hit reserve. So, like I say, our approach to market is a little bit different than some of the other captives. That channel for our lease returns is always in excess of 50%, and it has hit levels as high as 70 of those people who reach maturity.
You know, this particular slide kind of interfaces with another slide that we've got. I think it's the next slide, and it really kind of dovetails a lot of these issues: virtual inventory, internet sales, trying to manage that whole group. And Mark, I know you've just made some changes within your organization, so obviously there's some dedication towards this part of the business on your behalf.
Yeah, I view it as I view not dealer retail, but new car retail as sort of a leading indicator of what's ultimately going to happen in the auction space. And what that is that you got to meet the customer from where they're coming at. In this case, it's where the dealer's coming at. And as we see on the retail side, some customers want to only buy through an internet channel. They only want to shop by gathering information on the internet. And if states would allow them, hell, they'd close over the internet if they could. And I would expect that there's a portion of dealers, and we're seeing them today, dealers that are more than comfortable, buying cars off of their smartphone. And they never have to see brick and mortar or anything like that. And so collectively, we're going to have to be able to meet those dealers where they're coming from. We're still going to have dealers at the other end of the extreme that only feel comfortable on Tuesday morning, having their coffee with their buds, and buying their cars there. But even those dealers are using, as we know, they're using their smartphones to gather information, to figure out what cars they're going to buy and seeing what the marketplace is doing. So I think the big message collectively to everybody, as I see it, is that data integration, the sharing of data all the way from the marshaling end space down to the sale through all the different suppliers from the manufacturers and the consignors is going to have to be much more fluid, because it's going to be driven by who can give the best information at the right point in time. Luckily, we're in a cool position that I have a new franchise network. In the past year and a half, we've established a franchise network of 140 plus dealers for the sale of the Fiats in the United States. And we're just on the verge of having some company cars come back through to sell to the dealers. So it gives us a clean slate to think about how are we going to do it. These dealers are diverse across the entire country geographically. The cars are hitting us all across the country. So we're going to be doing a lot of interesting experiments with our partners, both at Odessa as well as Mannheim, to figure out the best way to do it. And it's probably going to be turning the pyramid upside down. I'm not going to move the cars to auction until I find out who the hell's going to buy the damn car. Just because I might have a car in California that a guy wants who's in Florida. So how do I figure that out? And so we're going to be experimenting a lot with that over the coming months. See if we can crack that code in a new and different way.
Thanks, Mark. Rob, any comments?
Well, I guess it's one of those circumstances where, as a marketplace evolves, you try to secure the best methodology in which you can sell your product. For our company cars, it's a little bit more difficult. We have 7 operating regional offices, which actually their responsibility is to sell the cars directly to the dealer. And then if they can't, we have to physically move them to an auction because we don't have physical space to do it online. Our finance partners, of course, run the whole gamut from, residual purchase at the dealership all the way through upstream into the lanes. And so, you have to look at all the things that are going on. I mean, you want to be as virtual as possible, particularly when you have a dealer group of ours that's only 650 dealers. So they have a tendency to buy cars all throughout the country. So one of the things that you try to do is you look at, okay, where do we place these cars? You know, if they don't sell upstream, and that's right now it's very high because the residual values that they can buy the cars is substantially less than they can buy them at the auction. So frankly, they're foolish if they don't take advantage of that. But nevertheless, you know, you want to have a broad spectrum of cars in each of those pockets so that you can balance it out, and obviously affects the ability to, you know, to finance cars down the road because you have higher residual values. So we constantly look at that, is, you know, what works the best for us, and that's where the technology that was talked about today on the panel of the Who We Are folks, that's critical for us. As you invest in your technologies, we're going to utilize it to the best of our and your advantage. So, you know, if you have concepts and ideas about, you know, some other technology, be it from handheld all the way to live, the way you want to market the product, you know, we're always open to that, because the ultimate goal is to move this car as quickly as possible into the right hands, which is the person driving it down the street.
Thanks, Rob. Okay, Dan.
I think one of the things that we have seen over the last couple of years is that our customers' needs have changed a little bit from a dealer standpoint. You know, they've gone through some really traumatic times over the last few years, where we've seen dealers that used to buy speculative buy when we had a lot of volume, where they backed out. They didn't buy, they didn't come in and start buying the large quantities of vehicles because they didn't know what was going to happen in the marketplace. And in reality, a lot of their credit limits were reduced. So what we've had to do is take a look at the market and figure out how do we address that. And what we've done is looked at going into the market with pretty consistent volumes, rather than when we get a large spike of return vehicles, pushing all those vehicles into the market. We'll hold some of those vehicles and level out the offerings. What that does is allows us to be a pretty consistent and dependable supplier to our our dealers, so that we've got vehicles available to them on a every other week sale basis. We'll use the upstream channel of Smart Auction to provide the vehicles to them, but once it gets to the physical auction, we'll level the volumes out and try to be that consistent, reliable supplier of the vehicles, which also helps us to maintain residual values on those vehicles, which is important to everybody that's sitting in here.
Thank you. Tom.
Not a dissimilar strategy. I would say, if I'm a dealer and I have all these tools available to me in terms of managing my used car inventory, what that means to us at Ford as consignors means we want to make sure that the dealers have a view into our inventory as soon as possible. So we've been emphasizing with our area managers and with our auctions, getting these vehicles ready for sale and up online so that they can either be purchased, and if they're being purchased at a buy now price prior to the live auction, they're also available for dealers to research and look at online before they attend a live sale. So we've had to make some process changes and try and speed things up to make sure that vehicles are processed quickly, not necessarily all the way through detail, but all the bits and pieces we need to get that vehicle up online for a dealer to research. It's obviously better for a dealer if they can turn that monitor around and look at that inventory that's sitting on our books, and they can make a sale on that vehicle and then just go get it at the auction. So that's a big deal. The other piece is in terms of the strategy, what's most important to us is achieving true price discovery. We do, as you probably know, we do sell upstream. Ford Credit sells upstream, but it's almost virtually all at a buy now price. We don't like to guess at what the market price is going to be, so those cars come with a little bit of a premium on them. And so I would say, a challenge to the auction industry is for us, it's all about achieving a bidding environment, and to date, that's best achieved in the auction lane, and that interplay between the bidders in the lane and the bidders on simulcast. For right now, that's what's been working best for us. We watch the migration of dealer behavior and where they're shopping. Like probably everybody else up here, we saw a dramatic increase in terms of dealers participating online, but it has started to level off to some extent. We are seeing dealers who are what we call the mix dealer, the dealer who shops online and in the lane, they tend to be moving more towards the internet at a quicker rate than the lane-only person, which that loyal lane buyer has stayed fairly steady for us, and that's okay right now. Since there's not really true price discovery upstream, we like the way it's partitioned out now, that when the vehicle comes into our responsibility at the auction location, between those in the lane, the ones online, and the online only buyers, it's a nice position to be in right now.
Thank you. You know, in an effort to try to keep us on track and in time, and that this next slide was going to be focusing more on internet sales, but as you heard here, there was a lot of discussion about that. So I think we're just going to move on to this next slide, because a lot of the auction people here would kind of like to hear what do you expect from auctions, upstream sales support, what these guys expect from the auction performance, and what kind of improvements are they looking for. So I'd like to start here with Rob, and we'll just circle through at this point.
So Virgil, as I mentioned earlier, kind of hit the internet split. You know, one of those things that is elusive is you know, the dealer attendance piece in upstream. You know, it is a struggle to get the eyeballs on the internet environment. So that's a struggle. The sales there still seem to somehow make it, but the number of bidders is tough. If we were not in the strained inventory piece that we are today, it'd be a big question just how well that would work. We don't do any of the virtual sales today where the cars are one place and the sales somewhere else, or the cars are at a physical auction and they're running them just virtually online on. So we don't participate in that. I do think that things like that, and from our slide earlier from AAX and inventory managers, I do believe that those things are going to have more convergence, more of the rifle bullet of demand matching the rifle bullet of supply. You know, I'm not going to say the days are gone where, you know, somebody's going to show up and he's going to be that 100-car buyer and he's going to go home with 10 truckloads of cars. You know, this industry can certainly return to that. But certainly for right now, inventories being short and sales being brisk has required us to, you know, put on a whole different hat. And you know, the ability to search cars across the internet, whether it's through a private label site or through an open channel with any of the auction partners, makes it a change-up. They've got. I loved one of these panels at an earlier conference where they were showing how they were capturing weekend sales at retail on cars that they hadn't bought yet. So they were turning the monitor around. You know, they didn't have that black Camry in inventory. They weren't going to be getting it in inventory, but the customer was hung up and couldn't close on what they had, so they sold him a virtual black Camry off the internet. And so they locked that deal down, turned around and put it over and took the car down at wholesale. So retail before wholesale, that's very intriguing. That's absolutely fascinating. If we reach out there and find out what our inventory is, we can certainly play as matchmaker to the dealer, and that whole piece becomes much more fluid, where we're you know, really facilitating the inventory to the dealer who really needs the inventory, and he's no longer a speculator thinking, I'm going to buy 10 black Mustang convertibles. Maybe they'll sell, maybe they won't. Where he knows exactly, I'm going to get 3 black ones, 2 red ones, 5 white ones, and you know, it's just a very different marketplace.
Rob, thanks very much. And you know, we've had 6 panelists up here, and we've really had some great conversation here. We've tried to limit it to what's going on in the industry right now, and I'd like to continue this. In fact, we could probably continue this for another hour. and we were prepared to do that. But just in keeping with timing here and everything, I want to thank each of the panelists here. They've really provided a lot of input, and those of you that are seated out there, if you have any other questions, I'm sure the panel group will be floating around here. Please feel free to contact them at that point. And again, I really appreciate all of your time and effort. Thank you so much.